All right, so get this.
Okay.
We're diving deep today into a theory that'll totally change how you see the Quran.
Ooh. Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's about those mysterious letter combos at the start of some chapters. The Muqatta'at.
You mean like Aleph Lam Mim?
Exactly, those have puzzled scholars forever.
Yeah, what are they all about?
Well, our source, the book Hebrew Muqatta'at, suggests they might be Hebrew words in disguise.
Whoa, Hebrew in the Quran.
That's the theory. Pretty wild, right?
Yeah, that's a bold claim. Tell me more.
So the author, B.A.Nirisch, he knows Hebrew,
Okay.
and he uses that, plus the context of the Quran itself, to build his case.
I'm listening.
It gets pretty controversial, but super fascinating.
So, like, how does this Hebrew in the Quran thing even work?
So Hebrew letters, unlike Arabic, they don't change shape within words.
Okay.
So you can swap Arabic letters for their Hebrew counterparts and maybe get a word you can translate.
Like a direct substitution.
Right, like an Arabic nun becomes a Hebrew nun. Nirisch has a table showing these swaps in his book.
Okay, so let's say you do these swaps. How do you know the Hebrew word you get means anything in the Quran?
That's the key, right? Nirisch starts with simple examples.
Okay.
Like Surah Al-Kalam starts with none,
Right.
with his substitution method. And the first word of the verse, you get the Hebrew for well.
Well.
And Nirisch links this to the idea of a sharp pen, like an incisive pen,
Interesting.
which kind of fits the chapter's theme of writing in Revelation.
So it's like a hidden meaning that goes with the chapter. Clever, but seems like a bit of a reach, no?
Yeah, some might say that.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's Surah Kaf, which starts with Qaf.
Okay.
The Hebrew translation of Qaf with the next word gives you line.
A line.
And guess what? Surah Qaf is all about the Quran guiding people, like
Yeah.
a line directing them.
Ah, okay, I see. So 2 for 2.
Right. So these aren't random words just popping up. They make sense in the chapter. That's what's cool.
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting.
For sure.
It gets trickier with combos of letters. Like Hamim, it's at the start of 6 chapters.
Okay.
This is where Narish really has to look closely at what those chapters are about to test his theory.
So Hamim, what's the Hebrew translation?
Well, Narish gives 2 options, hot and they.
Okay.
But looking closely at chapters Al-Dukhan, Al-Akaf, and Al-Jathiyah, all starting with Hamim, he finds this theme of hell and punishment.
Oh, so hot as in the fires of hell.
You got it.
Wow.
These chapters have descriptions of fire, torment, scorching heat,
Makes sense.
all matching that hot translation.
Yeah.
They, on the other hand, just doesn't fit.
So 3 chapters, same letters, similar themes, all line up with hot. Feels like more than a coincidence.
Right, like a pattern.
Yeah.
Maybe even a code hidden in those letters.
Mind blown. So we've seen single letter Muqatta'at at a 2-letter combo. What about the big one, Alif Lam Mim?
Yes.
It's in a bunch of chapters, especially about prophets, right?
That's right. 6 chapters, figures like Abraham, Hud, Joseph.
Big name.
Here's the kicker. Narish's translation for Alif Lam Mim is muteness or silence.
Wait, silence? Prophets? I don't get it.
Think about how the Quran commands attention before big messages.
Like, listen up. This is important.
Exactly. And who delivers those messages? Prophets.
Ah, so silence sets the stage for the prophet's words.
Yeah, like a subtle cue to the reader.
Clever.
This idea of commanding silence before divine knowledge is common in religious texts.
Makes sense.
It emphasizes what's about to be said.
Okay, I'm hooked. Incisive pen, lines of guidance, hot hellfire, the silence before prophecy. These translations are painting a different picture of the Quran.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Totally. Yeah. But before we go there, there's one more Muqatta'at I got to ask about.
Shoot.
It's in chapter Maryam, named after Mary, mother of Jesus.
Okay.
It starts with Kaf Hayyan End.
Ah, yes, that's a curious one.
It is.
It takes us to the Bible.
Oh.
And the translation Nirish likes best is, as a chewer?
As a chewer. What's chewing got to do with the Quran or Mary?
To get this, we need to look at the story of Zechariah from the Bible.
The father of John the Baptist.
Yeah, he was punished with muteness.
Right. He couldn't speak.
Because he doubted the angel Gabriel.
Okay, but what about the chewing?
So picture someone trying to speak but can't.
Okay.
They might make chewing motions, like trying to force the words out.
Ah. So as a chewer could be describing Zechariah's struggle.
That's Nirish's theory.
Wow, all that hidden in those 5 letters.
He suggests it's a subtle reference to Zechariah's story.
This is a lot to process. We need a break before we dive into what all these translations mean.
I agree. There's a lot to unpack here.
So we just skimmed the surface of this Hebrew word theory.
Right. It's a lot to take in.
We've seen Ha-mim, translating to hot in those hellfire chapters,
Yeah.
and Elif Lam Mim as silence in the prophet chapters.
Some pretty strong examples.
But it's a lot to grasp. What does this all mean?
It makes you think, doesn't it? We think of the Quran as this single revelation, but these Hebrew links point to something more complex.
Yeah, like there's a hidden dialogue going on between religions.
Exactly, all woven into the text.
But honestly, isn't this a bit like reading tea leaves? Couldn't these translations just be coincidence?
There's always room for debate with interpretations,
Sure.
but the sheer number of connections
Yeah.
and how they often match the chapter's theme,
Right.
it makes you wonder.
Yeah, it does.
It's like those letters are whispering a secret story.
I like that. Letters whispering stories. Okay, devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
Even if the translations are right, how do we know they were intentional? Couldn't they be leftovers from older texts?
That's possible as part of the debate.
Okay.
Were these Hebrew words put there on purpose, or are they echoes from the past? Tough to say for sure.
So what does B.A.Nirisch think? Deliberate or not?
He seems to think they were. He argues the authors, or even Muhammad himself, knew those older Hebrew texts and
Okay.
maybe used them in the Quran.
Wow, so not just echoes.
Right.
Intentional borrowing.
Possibly. That's a huge claim.
It is. It makes you think about the Quran's relationship to Judaism.
And how it all came about.
Exactly. Remember, the Quran didn't appear out of nowhere.
Right.
It came from a place with lots of different cultures and deep roots.
That makes it even more fascinating.
It is.
It's not just a standalone book.
Right.
It's part of this huge conversation that's been going on for ages.
I agree.
But let's stay grounded. You mentioned critics. What do they say?
One big thing is that it's all very subjective.
Okay.
Nirisch chooses which Hebrew translation to use, which letters to focus on, how it all connects to the chapter.
Right. There's no one right answer.
It's not an exact science.
Yeah, I get that. But those connections are still intriguing.
They are. Even if we don't agree with everything Nirisch says,
Right.
his work makes us think about the Quran's origins and influences in new ways.
And it opens up more questions.
It does.
It's like shining a light on something familiar.
And seeing it in a whole new way.
Exactly.
Speaking of new light, didn't Nirisch find something interesting about chapters 28 and 29?
Yes, they both have Muqatta'at.
They do.
Chapter 28, Al-Araf, starts with Alef Lam Mim,
Okay.
and chapter 29, El-Ha, begins with Ha.
The worn down one.
Yes.
My brain is feeling worn down trying to keep up with all this.
I hear ya.
But seriously, what did he find? Did the translations make sense?
With Alef Lam Mim, he got stuck at first. The Hebrew combos just didn't seem to fit the chapter.
What did he do?
He noticed something about the letter order.
Uh-oh.
He thought that middle mim might be a copying mistake.
A mistake.
Yeah, like a scribe messed up way back when.
So what, he just removed it?
He tried it out.
Is that allowed?
Well, he's not changing the actual Quran.
Yeah.
He's exploring the idea that errors happened over time.
Back when they were copying by hand.
Right.
Okay, makes sense.
So he took out the mim to see what
Didn't
happened.
it make more sense?
It did. Alif Lamad translates to force or constriction in Hebrew.
Okay.
And guess what? The very next verse talks about Muhammad feeling constricted in his chest.
Wow, like the Muqatta'at foreshadows the prophet's feelings. That's eerie.
It's like setting the scene.
Right.
Those letters are part of the story.
Not just random.
Exactly.
And Allah in chapter 29, did that fit too?
It did. Iha, meaning worn down.
Right.
It's in a chapter telling Muhammad not to be stressed by his mission.
That's beautiful.
The Quran acknowledges the burden and offers comfort.
And it all starts with those two letters. Iha.
It shows how those Muqatta'at can reveal deeper meaning.
Yeah.
It supports Nirisch's idea that they're not meaningless.
They're intentional.
Right.
I see why this theory is controversial. It really changes how we see the Quran.
It does.
But before we get into that, let's go back to as a chewer and Zechariah.
Yes.
I need to know how that all fits in.
We need to explore that further.
It connects the Quran and the Bible
It does.
and tells us more about the world the Quran came from.
It's fascinating.
All right, back to these Muqatta'at and the Hebrew theory.
It's a wild ride, right?
Totally. We got to finish up with that. As a truer translation in chapter Maryam, the one about Mary, mother of Jesus.
It connects the Quran to the Bible.
It does. But I still don't get the link between Zechariah and those 5 letters. Kaf-Ye-Nated.
Nirisch looked at every Hebrew translation,
Okay.
and as a chewer is the one that stands out.
Because a mute person might make chewing motions trying to talk.
Right. Picture Zechariah. He wants to speak, but
Yeah.
he might try to form words, making those Turing motions?
I can see it.
People might have called him a tour.
Wow, those 5 letters capture that struggle, wanting to speak but being unable to?
It's powerful.
It is. And this is in chapter Miriam, about Jesus' birth.
Right, and Zechariah's story is often linked to Mary's.
Because he also got an angelic announcement about a birth.
Exactly, the birth of his son, John the Baptist.
So 2 parallel stories. Divine intervention, miraculous births,
Yeah.
both with themes of doubt and not being able to speak.
It's like those letters tie the narratives together.
Subtly, but powerfully.
It adds another layer to the chapter.
It does. It's not just about Mary.
Right.
It's about faith and divine communication, even when there's doubt and silence.
Makes you think about the Quran's connection to older traditions.
It does. Like, if Nirisch is right, it suggests they're more connected than we think.
It challenges the idea that the Quran was separate from everything else.
Like it just appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah. It suggests a more fluid process where stories and ideas were shared.
Adapted, yeah.
Which makes sense, right? The Quran came from a place with Jewish and Christian communities.
So there had to be some mixing of ideas.
And Irish makes us look at those connections in a new way.
See the Quran as part of a bigger picture of religion.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've seen how these Muqatta'at could be Hebrew words. But let's be real, not everyone's going to believe it. What are the criticisms?
Well, some say it's all just coincidence.
Okay.
Nirisch is finding connections that aren't there.
Like he's overthinking it.
Maybe.
It does take a leap of faith to say these Hebrew words were put in the Quran on purpose.
Another critique is that it's all subjective.
Okay.
Nirisch chooses the translations, the letters, how it all connects. There's no set formula.
It's not like a math equation.
Right. It's more like interpreting poetry.
Where different people see different things.
Exactly. So we need to be critical but open-minded.
We don't have to agree with everything.
But we can appreciate the questions Nirisch raises.
And the new ways of looking at things.
I think that's a great point. Nirisch's theory might not solve the mystery of the Muqatta'at.
But it shows us there's always something new to discover.
About the Quran.
And about how we understand the world.
That's the beauty of it.
That's what I love about these deep dives. We get to explore these fascinating ideas.
And challenge our assumptions.
To our listeners, keep exploring. Read Nirisch's book, learn about the Quran, and decide for yourself.
It's a journey.
And everyone's journey is different.
Just remember to be open-minded, critical, and curious.
The world of religion is full of mysteries.
And that's what makes it so exciting.
So keep those minds working, keep those questions coming, and keep on diving deep.
Until next time.
Happy exploring, everyone.